I mean, I owe IIDA like 90% of where I am, like in
Wow.
my career and getting through the major I went through and staying in Birmingham and almost everything of where I am right now, I will give credit to IIDA.
Welcome to the South Cypress podcast, where we talk to members of the design community about their stories, knowledge, and expertise. I'm your host, Brandon White. Today I'm talking with Sammi Woronoff, President-elect of IIDA Alabama and interior designer for Gresham Smith here in Birmingham. This is a great conversation for designers who are interested in learning how to connect with their local design community. Sammi talks about her time studying as an interior design student at the University of Alabama, the decision between residential and commercial design, tips and tricks for making the most out of your internship, how to get started with IIDA, and what it's meant to her personally to connect with the local design community. Our first guest probably doesn't need any introduction. I'm guessing if you're listening to this show that you already know Sammi really well, but I'm really excited to have her. So we've got Sammi Woronoff. She's with Gresham Smith now, coming from Okemos, Michigan, was a lacrosse player in high school, I believe, studied at Alabama after that, where she graduated in 2019 with a 4.0 GPA. So I'll brag on her a little bit there. While she was there, she interned with Gresham Smith in 2018. And I guess they liked her and she liked them. She came back in 2019 and has been there ever since, doing some really great work on the healthcare side of things. And so I was excited to have Sammi as one of our first guests, because when I first met her, I had no idea that she had only been with Gresham Smith for 2 years. She's just always been super impressive, and now is the current president-elect of IIDA Alabama. And I know if you're anything like me, you know that networking and connecting with the design community is important, but sometimes it's intimidating. Sometimes it's hard to do that. And so I wanted to bring Sammi on to talk through some of that, share a little bit of her story, and I'm sure that we'll all learn a lot today from her. So Sammi, thanks so much for being here.
Brandon, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to South Cypress for doing this. I'm a huge fan of podcasts, so I am so happy to be here and share a little bit of my story and advocate for IIDA a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I'm excited too. I'm a big podcast listener, and this is my first time ever recording a podcast. So, go easy on me.
Absolutely. Yep. I'm typically on the listening end, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I figured a good place to start would just be when did you first know that you wanted to be an interior designer? Did it go back as far as high school?
No, it did not. So I feel like my family maybe had a little bit more of an idea now in retrospect. They're like, oh my gosh, it makes total sense that you're a designer. But it's funny, and my friends and family now all give me flack for it. Growing up, I always wanted to go to law school. And
Really?
I truly told people, like, up until I was too old to say this, like an embarrassing age, I told people I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. Like I said as my like dream profession, even at like 19 years old. I might have put it in my college essays, like embarrassingly so.
That's awesome.
I wanted to go to law school. I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice. I wanted to change the world.
I would love to have you on the Supreme Court.
So yeah, that was my goal going into college. And then I got to first semester at Alabama, and Alabama doesn't have a true like pre-law major. They just have pre-law track. So I was business management pre-law, and I was so bored. Absolutely hated it. I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. What have I done? I based my whole life on this plan and I can't do it. And one of my best friends, who was at the time going to be my future roommate, was an interior design major. And I was just absolutely like enamored by what she was doing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like your homework. And what you're doing is you're sketching and researching all of this design trends. And oh my gosh, can I just sit and watch you do your work? Like, can I go to a class with you and say I'm like a prospective senior? And so I found a way to get in the next semester and just do one prereq class as a freshman before I fully turned my life upside down and changed. But it was a done deal. Once I had taken the class for I think 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, no, game over. I'm changing my whole life plan.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's such a cool story. And it's good. A lot of us changed careers midstream in college, but it's nice that you did it your freshman year, at least.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I knew quick.
Yeah, some of us got halfway through. So that's good. But that's great. Well, what'd you think about the program at Alabama?
I really liked the program. So, as you had mentioned, I'm from Michigan, from a small town. I'm from near East Lansing, so a really big, it's where Michigan State is. So a big college town, huge university, but it doesn't really have any correlation to Alabama. So I went in knowing not a single person at the university or even really the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
So at the time, it wasn't as overwhelming as it probably should have been. In retrospect, I'm like, how did I do that? My 18-year-old self, what was I doing?
Yeah.
But the program being so small and all of our labs are, you have to work in groups and you have to get to know everybody. I really liked how small and connected the major was. It made that university a community for me. And I got to know my professors really well. Like I could show up at a professor's office at 4 p.m. with questions or concerns, or just to, catch up with them and get to know them personally about their career. And that wasn't abnormal. And at most other majors in our university and probably every other one, that was weird. And I really benefited from that. And I liked, and I know not all universities with design programs do this, but they let you pick a track between residential and commercial your senior year. I think in the state of Alabama, that's pretty typical, but we've learned through IIDA, some of the other state programs, you do what the program tells you. So your senior year, if it's commercial focus, you do commercial. If it's residential focus, you do residential.
Okay.
So you kind of get to do your senior, it's not necessarily a thesis, but it kind of is your senior project, whatever you want it to be. If you're applying to commercial firms, you get to pick that focus to apply to jobs with, to interview with. And I think that really helps with the job application and interview process. And I think it kind of gives us that competitive edge. Like I knew my situation was a little bit different, but I knew I wanted to go back to Gresham and that my future employers would be reviewing that project. So I did a small clinic healthcare project, knowing that that's what I was going to be going into. I had a little bit of knowledge, and that was that was a hard undertaking, but I think that directed my project where I might not have done that otherwise. Where the program has room for growth, like every program does. They, I think, absolutely have room to grow in terms of talking about licensure and the NCIDQ exam, because they have so many residential design students and professors. I know that they've been hesitant to talk about and encourage students to take the exam, because to practice residentially, you don't necessarily need it, but it's a huge opportunity in the state since we have a practice act. And graduating not knowing all the resources and opportunities out there, I think is a huge hindrance to our students.
Yeah.
So that's something I would really like to see change at the university. And I'm a huge advocate for it. And I would happily sit down with them and make it change if they've let us. And just getting more competitive over the years. As I've gotten to know some leaders at other IIDA chapters, I've learned other universities do application processes more for the student's sake, because in the nicest way, interior design is not for everybody. And I'm sure everybody listening to this, or even some people, my friend who I mentioned got me into this major, she dropped out this semester after I joined. And I give her all the credit of why I joined. And she says, like, yeah, I am the reason you joined, but also like I couldn't do it. Like once I got on the computer and all of the computer programs, she's like, it was so out of my wheelhouse. And I think an application process kind of helps weed out the people that are just in it for one small facet of like just liking a small creative portion of it, or they just like the very technical code driven portion, or just the computer work. So I think making programs have some sort of application process or portfolio review after your freshman or sophomore year, I think helps make sure that students are in the right place before it's too late and they graduate and then get a job that's in a different profession because it's not where they need to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, those programs have to really be preparation for what comes after the program, and
Right.
it's easy to miss there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you know that you wanted to be on the commercial side of things before your internship with Gresham Smith, or what was it like making that decision between commercial and residential?
Yeah, so yes and no. I knew before I interned with Gresham, but I didn't know from the beginning. I think I would say probably 99% of design students at some point say they want to be residential designers, just because the allure of it, at least as a freshman, is like, oh, but it seems so fun and you have creative freedom and it's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, as a freshman, I wanted to do it, and a little bit as a sophomore, mostly because all your classes focus on it too. So it's more of what you know and what you're learning, and where commercial is this overwhelming, intimidating beast that you haven't learned yet. And everybody downplays it of just like, oh, it's boring, it's corporate, it's codes and budgets and whatever.
Uh-huh.
So in my mind, I wanted to do it. And so it wasn't necessarily an internship. I was working at a local place in Tuscaloosa that had a storefront. And then they did custom upholstery work, but they also had 2 full-time designers. And within 3 weeks, they were a great business. Love them. I would use them to design at home, but I absolutely hated the job. I hated it so much that I was like, I don't know if I can make it through the summer. I cannot do this. So
Yeah,
very
I
quickly,
understand.
yeah, very, very quickly, I was like, this is not for me. I wasted a little bit of a summer. I felt like in the moment on learning something I didn't want to do. But for all students out there, part of internships is learning what you don't want to do. And that's why, and it wasn't really an internship. It was a summer job. I had no qualifications other than I was a design student. Like I had worked jobs before, but nothing in the industry. So this was about the only design related job I could get without any experience. So anybody looking for a job, I mean, I would say get anything in the industry you can take if you're interested, because very quickly you might learn, oh my God, I love this, or oh my God, I hate this.
Yeah.
So yeah, very quickly I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't know what I want to do. But so I quickly started looking at commercial. And then it just a lot of things fell into place with Gresham, which is what led me into healthcare. But I at least knew commercial was definitely the way for me after that.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, and every now and then I'll meet somebody that's kind of 50-50 residential versus commercial, but most of the time people land pretty hard into one category or the other because they just are so different. And
right.
Yeah. We need both. I'm glad both are there, but
Absolutely.
They're a lot different.
Oh, I am so grateful for the residential designers. One day when I have a home, like I will hire a residential designer because I can't do it. I probably will be the worst client, but yeah, no, I could not do their job. So they are incredible people. I was not going to be one of them.
Yeah, it's just a totally different game. So
absolutely.
That's cool. Well, and it sounds like, I mean, between that job and then your Gresham Smith internship, I mean, by the time you were finishing up with school, you had a really good idea of what you wanted to do just based on those experiences. I mean, I think a lot of times we tend to think that, well, if I need to take all these personality assessments and do all this soul searching and all this sort of thing to decide what my passion is or what I want to do. And there's certainly a place for that. But man, when you can say, yeah, I've actually done this job before and I liked it, or I've done this before and I didn't like it. To me, that's the ultimate test of what you want to do, So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, as you were thinking about, if you were talking to students, because I'm guessing that maybe some design students will listen to this podcast and they're kind of thinking about, what they need to do to prepare for their internship, what kind of advice would you give them?
So I think it depends a little bit on kind of where I was going with what year you are, but no matter what, if you are prepping to apply for an internship or if you're just prepping to once you get there, through the whole process of interviewing, submitting your application, and going through your internship, I guess kind of 3 points always, whether I am long-winded at saying it or I'm short and sweet and to the point, and it depends on my mood that day, which one I am. It kind of falls back to these 3 points of, I would say, be candid, be authentic, and be curious. Elaborate a little bit. So be candid. So be very, whether you know what you want or you don't know, like that's okay, but I would say that. So if you are interviewing for an internship and they are asking you, are you trying to, with Gresham, just because this is what I know, say you're interviewing in Birmingham and we ask, are you looking to be in Birmingham? Are you looking to go anywhere? Are you willing to relocate? And you don't care, say that. It's like, we won't be hurt knowing you want to go to Nashville, or you only want to be in Birmingham, or you want to go to a different market, or whatever the situation is. We would rather, there's no wrong answer. We just want to know the truth. I guess the only wrong answer would be deception in that case. So be very candid about what you want, and be just honest about your situation at that point and what you're looking to gain out of it. Because I think I was very clear of, I'm having this internship because I don't know if I want to stay in Birmingham, but I know I want to work for a larger architecture and engineering firm. I didn't want to necessarily stay local. I didn't know where I wanted to be. But I didn't know what market I wanted to be or what city. So I knew, I was like, I'm interning to get a job offer out of it. So I was very serious and upfront, like, I am interning for a job. If it doesn't end up in one, that's okay. But that is my hope. And it ultimately worked out that way a little over time. But I was very upfront about it. And I think that ended up working out in my favor. So I think laying all your cards out on the table through that process just only helps you in the end. And then being authentic, of being yourself through the whole process, because you don't want to put on this facade of someone you think that the firm wants in for a summer, because say you get a job out of it and you go back and you're this, then you start being yourself. They're like, wait, this is not who we hired. This is not who we want to work with. And you don't want to be somewhere that they don't accept you for who you are. And it's okay that you don't know everything, or, if how you process things when you're stressed or you're intimidated. Like, obviously there is professional etiquette, but at the same time, it's okay. Being an intern is a learning curve. And I think your employers know that. And the senior employees know that. So I think being your authentic self through the whole process ultimately will get you where you need to be, whether it's, a summer job or a true internship kind of after your junior or senior year. I think only it's to your benefit. And then lastly is be curious. And that is, be curious about the firm, be curious about everything they have to offer you, but also be curious about anything design related that maybe they're not putting in front of you to do for work. But what else do you want to know about the profession? Say you're drafting or doing something in Revit, or you're rendering, but you really want to go to a job site. Go ask somebody. The worst thing they can say is no, but be curious, ask a question. Even if they can't take you tomorrow, you're there for 10 to 12 weeks. I'm sure they'll find time to do it. And at least asking the questions on the front end, or even telling them in a cover letter or in an interview what you're hoping to gain out of it, that these are all the things up front I want out of an internship. They might, not give you the interview because they're like, well, we could never give her all these things because we don't have the capability of bringing an intern to a site visit. It might be hard to get that rejection, but just putting all this information out there on the front end ultimately gets you where you need to be in the end. That was a very long-winded answer for my short and sweet response. But
no, that's fantastic. And I think it really speaks to the fear that we all have of that we are supposed to have something figured out that we don't necessarily have figured out. And it it's so powerful when you can say, yeah, I don't know
Right.
everything. I'm still learning, and anybody
Absolutely.
anybody that I want to respect me is going to respect that, if
Mhm.
they don't get that, then they're probably not the people that you want to be working with anyway. So,
Right. Yeah. The amount of times my coworkers and my boss and I will all say, we need to look into that because that's a great question and we don't know. Like
yep.
it's okay to not know the answers. And design is ever changing. Healthcare design, which is what we do, is ever changing, and that's a good thing. But it's okay to not know the answer. It's just owning that you don't know the answer and being willing to go through the steps of finding an answer.
Yeah. Thinking that we have everything figured out is a really dangerous place to be,
Yeah, no, that is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
That is when it's a red flag.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've got a bunch of questions that I want to ask you, but I want to be careful with our time. I know you've got a lot going on. Yeah, but so let's transition to talking about getting involved with IIDA. So can you talk to me a little bit about when you first started getting involved with IIDA and what that was like?
Yeah. So I got involved. So, like I said, I joined the major at Alabama my spring of my freshman year, but I actually kept my double major with business and interior design till I think honestly till my senior year. I kept it way too long just because I didn't tell my parents till senior year I switched my major. And so
What?
Yeah, that was a whole another rabbit hole.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. I didn't tell them because I just didn't want to hear anybody's negative opinion. So I just kept the double major just in case. So I had the double major freshman year, so I was pretty busy. Sophomore year, I think, is when IIDA actually started a campus center at Alabama. And so I think in the spring is when I joined the organization. And then my junior year, I actually became the vice president.
Nice.
But it was more just, I very quickly, the summer after my sophomore year, I worked at that summer job, the residential job, with the incoming chapter president. And I had gotten to know her well over the summer. And I told her, I really want to be involved. I have this network I'm forming at the university, but I definitely don't have a desire to stay in Tuscaloosa after college. And just researching about IIDA, it's not only all over the country, but it's international. I think it helps my networking not just be all these connections I'm forming in Tuscaloosa. She was like, oh my gosh, that's more than I've heard from anybody as a sophomore. Like, do you want to be on the board? I was like, oh, well, it's not really what I was asking, but maybe like, what all does it entail? And she's like, it's really not a lot, like mainly just helping me with things like, and mainly training you to take over as president your senior year. I was like, okay, don't really know what I'm getting myself into, but why not? Like, I feel like this isn't something I should ever say no to. So got really heavily involved my junior year, as it was her vice president / president-elect was kind of the same position, or it was the same position, and then took over the chapter campus center my senior year as president. And then transitioning, I think, which is a lot more common now, a lot of our members, and I think this is across the country, a lot of our members come from being student members as design students, and then they transition to being associate members as part of a state chapter or city center once they become designers at a firm. Or I guess it kind of depends, but so I transitioned. I took about 3 months off after I graduated, moved to Birmingham, and then kind of started the whole process again, but then got on the board again pretty quickly. And 3 years later, here we are, president-elect again.
That's awesome. Total Sammy move, just jumping in there.
Yeah, I say can't say no. It's an incredible opportunity, and not something you can or really want to say no to. At least I did not want to. But it's something great to be a part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, were you were on the board before? What was your first position on the board after school?
So yeah, after school, I first joined the board as VP of Communications. So our VP of Communications is the one who sends out all the email blasts that you get, and does a lot of the social media posts. The board positions have slightly tweaked over the years, so it's a little bit confusing, but it has helped a lot with managing our social media accounts. Every once in a while, when I was in the position, it would be making graphics and making content. So I was in that position for a year. And then I was the vice president of student affairs for a year. So last year I was VP of student affairs, which is managing our 3 student campus centers. So University of Alabama, Auburn University, and Samford University. So managing those chapters, helping their budgets, planning events, getting them sponsors for things if they need it. And then planning student day, which we just had 2023 student day the other month or
really
a couple
well.
weeks ago.
Good job.
Yeah, really successful. To say that was not my event this year, just helped out. But it was our most successful one yet. Most students. It was a great event. And then technically that was a 2-year term, but then I was asked and nominated to step into president-elect. So I was only in VP of student affairs for 1 year and then stepped into president-elect. So I have been all transitioned from president-elect to active president this July.
Okay. Nice.
So pretty soon.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Coming up.
That's great. Well, I know that a lot of people are probably kind of peripherally interested in joining the board, but haven't really done a whole lot of research into what's involved with it, or maybe they just have questions. What
right.
For either somebody like me that's a rep or somebody that's a designer, what's it like being on the board?
Yeah. And I think that's a completely valid question. Now, it's kind of hard to know fully unless you have someone really close to you on the board that whether you work with them or they're your best friend and you just see it day in, day out. But I would say it depends on the position, because if you are going to take over like special events, which plans are big annual events like IDs and casino night and the holiday party, or if you're going to come into social media is something you do, every day or 4 or 5 days a week, but it's not a hugely time consuming task. It's, 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, where special events is 3 periods a year you have an event, but it's 3 very demanding periods, if that makes sense. So it definitely varies. This year, I think we have 18 positions slated for the board. It typically varies between 17 to 20. We try to have lessons learned from the years past. So what's worked? Do we need, 2 more people on events, 1 less? Do we need social media? Do we not? But this year, I think we have 18. I can't remember if it's 18 or 19. So it depends on the position. And then the board dynamic. So reps are really great on the board just because their time flexibility is a little bit different than designers. But then obviously the organization is meant for advocating for the design profession. So we want a board full of designers. So finding that balance is also very important. So there are a lot of factors that play into, long story short, how time consuming and what a commitment it is being on the board. But I would say down to basics is, we do 1 board meeting a month. And each year the board votes on if it's, a lunch meeting, if it's after hours, and this year we actually did every other month it switches because we couldn't find one time that worked for everybody, and that's okay. And, we have Huntsville people on the board, so they call in and that's fine. So 1 board meeting a month. We typically do a retreat every quarter. We do 2 a year, and then it sometimes varies because we do some trips up to Chicago for the chapter leadership conference with IIDA HQ, but only certain positions go every year, and that's selected by headquarters who goes. So certain positions have a little bit more of opportunities for more of a time commitment. Like this year, it's focused on communications. But if they have a conflict, that's okay. And we'll bring another position. But it's really how much you also are willing to put into it, because it is fully, what you put into it is what you get out of it. And I think the easiest way I would say to get a good feel of what it is being more than just a member is to join a committee. I think post-pandemic, our board and our chapter has done a really good job of utilizing our committees. I wasn't on, not to say we weren't before, but at least during the pandemic, that was really hard.
Yeah, everything was kind of nuts.
Right. But so for most of our events, like for Student Day, for Advocacy Week, which we have coming up, for Casino Night, for IDs, we have these committees made up of some board members, some past board members, some chapter members, and it just spreads the effort of planning the event, and it gets different opinions of what do people want. And it makes it more of a team effort, and typically, hopefully, makes an event that everybody wants to attend, that reps want to attend, that sponsors want to attend, that designers want to attend, and non-members, hopefully some prospective members too. So I think anybody who's interested in joining the board but isn't quite sure if they're ready yet, I would say, and because we're in the middle of nominations right now, so this next year, email, I think at the bottom of every chapter or every monthly newsletter, we have a button that says, if you're interested, join a committee. You can either email myself or Mary Claire, who is our current chapter president, or, click that link and email just our info email at IIDA, and we'll get you on a committee. Because I think that is probably the easiest, quickest way to get a feel of like, oh, this isn't actually that bad of a commitment, and this is really fun. Like, I get, it might be 2 meetings a month that we have committee meetings and a few tasks I'm in charge of here or there. Or, wow, this is way too much of a commitment for what I have in my personal life and my career, and I can't do this right now. Because we don't necessarily want people on the board who don't have time to commit to it what we need either. We have a big enough industry that we need people on the board who can put the board, not necessarily first, but who have enough time to commit to it that the chapter deserves. And we have enough the industry that we can lean on each other. And if people roll off because other things come first, like that is completely fine. So I think a committee is a really good way to get a feel for that, or, talk to the person if you're really interested in a specific position, if you're interested in sponsorship. Ask Nicole to go get coffee, or Mary Claire or myself, since we have a good feel of all the positions, and just talk to us about it. Because since it varies so much, if you're interested in one thing, that's also a really good way to say, these are 2 things, give me an idea of what these 2 positions look like on a day-to-day or a month-to-month basis. Because depending on the person's work schedule and personal life, I think most people I would say, these 5 positions might work great for your life, but these 4 might be kind of hard right now. So maybe only nominate yourself for these few, and we'll go through the nominations process for that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's neat just to think about that as being an in-between. If somebody's kind of wondering, okay, I'm a member, I'm coming to events, I want to get a little bit more involved, but I'm not necessarily willing to commit to a whole year of serving on the board. It's good to know that the committees are kind of a good middle ground, because when it's for a specific season about a specific project or event, that's a lot easier to say yes to than an entire year. So
right. Yeah, it's a short-term version. You're like, I know IDs, that's not a great example, but IDs is in 2 months. So it's like, okay, I can do this, I can commit to 2 months, but it's hard to commit for 15 months to a board term if you're not sure. So committees are a great way to do it. So reach out to any of us on the board, and we'll get you plugged in somehow to a committee.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we've talked a lot about your involvement in IIDA all the way back from being a student to now. And we've talked about the nuts and bolts of what it's like to be involved and how to get connected. I'm really interested in just what the impact has been to you, Sammi. Like what's it been like for you personally, to be connected within the community, and what does it mean to you?
In short, I owe IIDA like 90% of where I am, like in my career and getting through the major I went through and staying in Birmingham and almost everything of where I am right now, I will give credit to IIDA. I actually met my coworker, Katie Johnson, who she works for Gresham, at one of the IIDA student days. When I was a student, I think it would have been my junior year, like January of my junior year, and met her, talked for maybe 15 minutes, but I only had like a business card on me. She reached out to a professor at the university, asked the professor to get my email, to give her a resume to apply for an internship, because they were like, you seem like a great fit. It was just this whirlwind of events, and that I almost didn't go to the student day. I can't remember why. I had some other conflict. But I was like, no, I feel like I really need to go. Everybody's been hyping it up. And just every rep I have met, every designer I have met, every event I have attended, it has made me so much more connected through the industry. Like I have just made friends, and like it's been a true community to me. Like when I moved here, I don't think I know I necessarily didn't plan to stay in Birmingham. And when I went to college, I definitely did not plan to stay in Alabama. Obviously, I planned to go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, exactly. DC.
But I was not planning. I don't know where I wanted to go necessarily. I just didn't want to stay local. Alabama was really just a stepping stone to go to law school somewhere else, or just to go to a big city. And along the way, and then I got my internship, and then I got the job, and every step along the way, I went to IIDA things, and I got connected, and I made friends on the board, and then got really close with all of these reps I worked with who are always IIDA sponsors and always at events. And it just was this intentional effort that every time I attended something, people remembered me. And it's like, people have no business recognizing me and remembering me. Like, I'm a nobody. I'm not from here. I literally was just, especially my internship year, like that summer, I attended some IIDA events. So like I was a student member, but I came with the people at Gresham, but I'm like, I have no business being here. Like it was really weird, and everybody remembered me, and that just meant so much to me that when I came back the next year, I was like, how do people remember me from a year ago? Like, even if I went back to Michigan, like, I don't know if people would remember me because I've been gone in college for 4 years. So I think I was just so touched how much of an impact everybody had on my life, that I felt like wanted to be here, and I wanted to be a part of this community, and have made so many friendships through it that I now don't want to leave. But I mean, I definitely give IIDA the credit of, getting me the internship and the job, and making those connections, and giving me the networking opportunity to be there, and be in the right place at the right time. But then now also being on the board, having these opportunities very early in my career to learn certain leadership and like management skills that I would never have the opportunity to learn in my job. Just because I could never learn to manage people, especially who would be like considered my superiors in a workplace, just because I'm 25 and have 3.5 years of work experience. But learning to manage all of these people and this budget, and run a small business basically for a year or 2 or 3 years when you consider president-elect, president, and past president. That is a very daunting task, but an incredible learning opportunity that I would never find somewhere else. And I think that is an invaluable skill that I will hold with me for a long time.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. I love that answer, because I fundamentally believe that we were created and designed to be part of community and not go at things alone, and It seems like IIDA is just a good way for, if mainly on the professional side, but I think it turns into the personal side as well, of making real friends with people, and being able to just be connected and be known, like what you were talking about. I mean, those are things that just fundamentally we all want. And I think a lot of times we desire that, but we don't know the path to be able to make it happen. And so I think being able to talk through some of this, this is how you do it. Just getting out there and putting yourself out there,
Yep. Just show up.
Yeah. And I also think what you were ending with about managing a budget, managing people, having the opportunity to do a lot of things like that. I mean, that's going to set you up really well for one day being a firm leader or something like that. If you want to,
Right.
you're able to kind of learn the ropes and take on lots of responsibility in IIDA. And I could just see that setting you up really well for the future.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
Awesome.
I give all the credit to IIDA.
Yeah, it's cool. Personally, I really enjoyed, and I'm still kind of the new kid on the block, but I really enjoyed getting to know people and starting to feel the same thing that you did. If I go to an event and I'm known and people remember me, and it's powerful,
Yeah,
So
it's heartwarming, and not even necessarily every chapter is that way. I think partly a little bit of it's that Southern hospitality and being maybe a smaller community than Dallas, but it's like people go and ask about my personal life and ask how my roommate is and ask how my trip home was. And it's like, it's friendships beyond networking and asking those questions because they want to win my business. It's like, I know they're asking because they actually are curious what my answer is.
Yes.
And that means a lot to me.
Yeah. It's a real relationship. It may be a professional relationship, but it's a real friendship, real relationship. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I think we probably should wrap up. I've taken up a lot of your time already. Is there anything new with IIDA Alabama going on this year that you'd like to talk about, or just anything you'd like to kind of promote a little bit?
Yeah. Really quick. I feel like a jam-packed year coming up.
Nice.
So I'll run through some quick highlights. So it is an IDs year. So I will promote that. So we have IDs coming up on April 21st.
Looking forward to that.
Biennial, I always get that wrong, biennial every other year. Awards gala. It's going to be at the Florentine in downtown Birmingham. So table sales, I think go launch on March 1st. So get ready to buy your tables. And then we are really working on growing our relationship with AIA in Birmingham. Hopefully across the state of Alabama, but that's something we've really grown over the last year or two and are continuing into this next year. So I think it's in August. We are doing we did it last year. So we're doing a joint healthcare symposium with AIA again.
That was a great event last year. I really enjoyed it.
That's something
that was a big reason why I'm doing this podcast, which is it's a talk for another day. But as I was there, I was just thinking, man, there's a lot of expertise in our community that needs to be shared even more, and so anyway, different story.
Well, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, so we're doing it again. That was something AIA had decided to do and invited IIDA to be a part of it. And so we were so excited and flattered they wanted us to be a part of it. So we're doing it again. And I think it's sometime in August. So be on the lookout for more info with that. We are really working on doing more intentional, purposeful events this year, and just in general moving forward, but to better engage our members. I feel like post-COVID events that firms and dealers are doing on their own, and then IIDA is doing, and then just around Birmingham, and that the world is doing, like there's so many events. So we don't just want to fill people's calendar to fill them, but we want to have very intentional, engaging events for our members. So I think are having a little bit of a slow start, but we are really trying to focus on how to connect our students and our emerging professionals with some of our mid and senior level designers and open the door for some natural mentorship opportunities and relationships to grow. So we're trying to revamp that, and with some of our event planning, and how when our board changes over in the summer, we're going to change some of our board positions, how they're set up for event planning. So this is kind of we're changing it right now to hopefully affect the long term, but just be aware that we are hearing that our members, I think, are overloaded and don't know what to do and what to attend and how to be engaged and involved. So we hear you, and we are trying to plan for everybody and get everybody involved with some really fun event opportunities. And then our Huntsville chapter, Huntsville City Center, has really been growing and involved. So it's actually not an official city center yet, but that is something on the books for 2023. Hopefully we will relaunch our Huntsville City Center. So we've got a group up there who's been very engaged and involved. So hopefully we've got to go through HQ to officially get it set up, but sometime this year, I think we'll get them involved. I think last thing and then we have a philanthropy cornhole event this fall. We had that in our sponsorship package.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, because we typically our holiday party is a philanthropy fundraiser, and we do like a product drive for philanthropy donations. But we really wanted like a philanthropy fundraising event on the books, and something to pair our sponsors with design firms to have like an event, fundraiser type event. So not totally planned yet, but it's in the works. So more details to come on that. We'll have something this fall.
Nice. I love that. I love
that.
Yeah,
lots of things in the works.
Yeah. Well, as people are listening to the podcast and are thinking, I want to get involved with the IIDA, what's step one if they're not involved at all to get connected and start plugging in?
Look on the website and attend an event. Most of our events you can attend not as a member. Like almost every single one, there's very, very few you can't attend as a member. So you just go to our website and pull up the events calendar and you can register, or my email is on the website, and shoot me an email and I'm always down to get a cup of coffee or get a drink or grab lunch and talk to you about getting you involved if you want a more, direct approach, or at least if you just don't want to show up alone to an event. The more the merrier, and I am more than happy to show up with you because I hate showing up alone places. So
everybody does. Yeah.
So reach out to me individually or show up to an event, email the info email if you want kind of a more catered approach of like what, professional development events do you have coming up? What social events do you have coming up? And we can help try to tailor what events coming up we have to help you out there. So there are a few ways, but the easiest way I would say, check out social media or our events calendar to see what we've got upcoming.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I've got one last question for you. I wanted to ask you just, and this is not necessarily work related, but just what is something that's giving you joy in this season of life? There's a lot of, there's a lot of bad news out there. There's a lot of difficult things going on in the world. And I just kind of want to push some good things out there, so and it could be a new flavor of coffee that you discovered or a cool new project you're working on, just anything at all.
Okay. I have maybe two answers. So
I'll take them.
One is more like out there. So post COVID, I am like, if you don't totally know me, I am a goer. I like to explore and travel and be doing something all the time, and probably makes sense because I talk all the time and I'm moving all the time and I'm always doing something. But all the people I love and care about, like I have a lot in Birmingham, but I have a lot all over the country and all over the world. So COVID, I really, really struggled not getting to see my people and not getting to see the world. So I feel like finally coming out of that, now that work has slowed down a little bit too, I have been planning trips on trips, even if they're in 2024. Like I already have 3 flights booked in 2024. Just having something on the calendar to look forward to, and that we can plan and know like, oh my gosh, I get to see one of my best friends from high school. Even though it's in 14 months, I get to see her at that time. Awesome. That has genuinely changed my outlook. I'm like, knowing I get to see all these people in my life and go get to see the world and have a plan for it. I feel like I just got really down over the last few years of like,
it was tough.
This is what the working world is like. And I just work and I sit at home and I text and FaceTime with the people I love who are all across the world, and we maybe see each other at the holidays and that's it. So planning trips and planning time and taking that PTO and making a dedicated effort to see the people we care about has genuinely just like made me a happier person. Like last week, my cousin and I went to Mexico City. She's one of my best friends. We went to Mexico City for a week, and I am then like beaming ever since I got back. Honestly, ever since I stepped foot off the plane there. It was one of the best trips ever. And like spending the whole week with her, just, dilly-dallying around the town was like the best thing ever. And we have decided we're doing it every year. We're going
That's
somewhere
awesome.
on a cousin best friend trip just because.
Yeah. Man, that's cool.
But on a more relatable everyday note, now I'm inspired from how good the coffee was in Mexico City that I am now on a mission.
So my coffee example was a good one then.
Yes, because now I'm on a mission. Even though traveling is great and all, I can't just wait till I travel to have good coffee. So
Yeah. That's awesome.
now when now in Birmingham, I'm on a mission to find the best cappuccino in Birmingham.
Okay.
So I'm just every week I'm gonna give myself one because like I make my coffee here as much as I don't like it. It's not fun. It's not as exciting, even though it tastes good. It's just not the same.
Yeah.
So one place a week ish, I'm gonna go try a new coffee shop in Birmingham and try their cappuccino. So
I love that.
if you have any recommendations, let me know. But I'm just gonna, make my way around town to all the coffee shops and try their cappuccino.
Yeah, that's great. And have you been to Red Cat over there by our office yet in
I
Peppersville?
have, but I actually haven't had their cappuccino because I never really drank them before. And then that's all we had in Mexico City. And I feel like my life's forever changed.
Okay.
They were just so good.
People like Red Cat. That's got to be one of the stops. So
maybe that'll be one of my first ones.
Yeah.
Set the bar pretty high.
Yeah. Well, good deal. Well, Sammi, thank you again for being on. I really had a good time talking to you about this stuff.
This was great.
Yeah. And so everybody that's listening, thank you so much for taking time to listen. And you heard it from Sammi. She's trying to get a cappuccino at find the best one. And so if you want to learn more about IIDA and how to get involved, just go buy Sammi a cup of coffee, and she'll be glad to talk to you about it. So, all right, everybody, thanks so much. And really appreciate it.